to begin with a piece that I did for a major conference in New York, where Sister Margaret Walker was invited to lead this conference, this talk to women. From a Black feminist conference, Reflections on Margaret Walker, Poet. Chicago, October 1977, Saturday afternoon. Margaret Walker walks her red clay Mississippi walk into a room of feminists, a strong gust of a woman, rainy warm honeysuckle kisses and smiles, and I fold myself into her and hear a primordial Black song sailing down the Guinea coast. Her face, ordained with lines, confesses poems, hallelujahs, choruses. She turns, leans her crane-like neck on the edge of the world, emphasizing us in this hotel village room, heavy with women. Our names become known to us. There is an echo about her of Black people, rhyming of a woman celebrating herself and a people. Words ripen on her mouth like pomegranates. This pecan color woman, short-limbed with lightning, and I swallow her whole as she pulls herself up from youth, shaking off those early Chicago years where she and Wright and others turned a Chicago desert into a wellspring of words. Eyes, brilliant solution eyes, torpedoing the room with sun. Eyes dressed like a woman, singing through riddles, offering asylum from ghosts. She stands over centuries as she talks, hands on her waist, a feminine memory washed up from another shore. She opens her coat, a light-colored blouse dances against dark breasts. Her words carved from ancestral widows, rain children, and the room contracts with color. Her voice turns the afternoon brown. This Black woman poet, removing false veils, baptizes us with syllables, woman words, entering and leaving at will. Let a new earth rise. Let another world be born. Let a bloody peace be written in the sky. Let a second generation full of courage issue forth. Let a people loving freedom come to growth. Let a beauty full of healing and a strength of final clenching be the pulsing in our spirits and our blood. Let the martial songs be written. Let the dirges disappear. Let a race of men now rise and take control. Walking back to my room, I listen to the afternoon, play it again and again, scatter myself over evening walls and passageways wet with her footprints. In my room, I collect papers, breasts, and listen to our mothers humming. And that's the piece I did for Sister Margaret. We were in New York City for some big, poetry reading. It was a big affair, and Baraka and Larry Neal, a bunch of people were there, all these poets. And at the end of the program, a sister came out and she read that poem. And if you can imagine a room full of these young people, right, catching their breaths as she went on and on with the poem, right? And when it was finished, I said out loud, "Who is the poet?" And they said, "Margaret Walker." And I was crying at the end, listening to that poem, right? And so it was just, that poem for my people is just an amazing piece. It's one of those things that you listen to, and you at some point. I brought the book down with the poem for my people. Anyway, everybody in the room was crying, because this is how Ms. Margaret began that piece. She said, "For my people everywhere, singing their slave songs repeatedly, their dirges and their ditties and their blues and jubilees, praying their prayers nightly to an unknown God, bending their knees humbly to an unseen power. And it went on, for my people, for my people, for my people. And then she ended up with what I did, let a new earth rise up, right? And it was, I mean, the whole audience of all these young people, we had never heard this poem by Margaret Walker, but you know what that's about, not really being taught anything at all in these schools. And so here we were. I had arrived at this poem and I said, gee, I look forward to meeting her. And fast forward maybe a couple of months later, in a place called Detroit, Michigan, Dudley Randall, who had started Broadside Press, right, said, I have someone I'd like for you to meet, Sister Sonia. And I walked up, it was Margaret Walker. And she she did this. I mean, she was short like me, right? But commanding. I mean, you think she's 6 feet tall, to be frank. You really want to look up, until you realize that, you're seeing eye to eye with her, right, at this point. And she said, you're that little one, she says, going around here, telling America what she should be doing. No one had ever said that to me. And she said, so you're the one causing all the trouble, huh? She said, come here. And she gave me this mighty, mighty hug. Right. That was when I got that letter, right? I remember I used to share with my grad classes and my undergrad classes. I never made them feel as if, like, so you're undergrads, right? I said, here's this great letter. I said, you know what I'm going to do? You all figure out a kind of contest of how you want to do it. And the three that you want, they were supposed to write a poem or something, and they were going to be the judges. I was not the judge, okay? But the classroom was going to be the judges, whatever. And what they did is that the three best poems that they thought had been written, I took them with me down to that conference. I paid for their plane tickets. I paid for their rooms. I said, this is history. You're going to be here. Plus, you got to come back and report to our class, our creative writing class. And they couldn't believe that they were actually going to Mississippi. They could not believe that this was happening to them. And they came back and did a report and then read what they had written at the same time. And these were young males, right? And some had tears in their eyes saying what an experience it was. And they just constantly thanked me for it. That's what we do, don't we, my sister? Whenever we can do this, whenever we can expose the younger generation, to people who have done, classic work. And this is a classic for my people, is it not? Right. That you expose them to that. They were exposed to all the other poets who would come out there also too. And they took notes and they had to report to the class all the things that they had done, the people they had sat down and listened to. It was a glorious, glorious time for them. And, I was someplace in California. One of them was from California. And people came up on stage. And this young man came walking towards me. And I turned around and looked at him. And I thought to myself, he looks familiar. And I said, oh, my God, 1973. Can you imagine, right? And he said, he came up and just hugged me. He said, you don't know that I still remember that was one of the greatest things that had ever happened to me, going to Jackson, Mississippi, meeting the great poet Margaret Walker and being involved with all those other poets who were there. He said, I still have never forgotten that. So, we do that, do we not? As writers, as teachers, we do that, do we not? To bring them into that arena. This is no place where you say, well, you can't come. It's for all us important people. You bring these people, these young people with you so they can sit and listen and taste that history and taste that history and know, and they could say years later, I was there when that happened. And I was there when I heard Margaret Walker read for my people. I was there when I heard Alice Walker. I was there when all these people, Audre Lorde, when all these people were there, and I saw them talking to each other. I remember most of all is that how they open up to us, the younger ones, how we've tried to open up to you younger ones, how we've said, call me. I would give my number out to people, and people would say, you're giving your number out. I say, yeah, they might need to talk at some point. They might need to go. They might want to say, would you like to hear the poem that I'm doing? And I say, even though sometimes I'm busy, I would say, yes, I'd like to hear the poem that you've done, whatever. And you give support. You say, oh, send me a copy of that, and I'll look at it, and maybe I'll make a couple of little corrections, whatever, etc. But continue to write. I mean, you need that kind of energy. You need to know at some point that they are the next generation coming, and they must continue. They must continue this great generation of what I call great Black poets, right? They must continue as Sister Margaret and Sister Gwen did. Sister Gwen, would invite us to her house on Sunday in Chicago, right? And she would feed us, whatever. And then she would say, you have any new poems to read? And we had made that trip all the way, from New York City, to be there and to listen to her in her house, listen to this great woman on a Sunday who would asking Hakeem and all the Chicago poets who were there, to read something that we had written, and to listen to her. And of course, we would ask her, could you read something that you've done? Or we would ask her to read one of our favorite poems of hers, whatever, etc. But it is opening up to the world, saying simply, come on, we've done this, we've had this since the very beginning, since that little girl got off that slave ship, and they looked up and she was writing poetry, whatever. Yeah, because she indeed had been trained in something. She was not just like someone who just all of a sudden showed up, in somebody's house, that she had that history and herstory, she had that gift. I said, I wrote a haiku to Mungu Marani from Beijing. I said, let me wear the day well, so when it reaches you, you will enjoy it. And that evening, I read my poetry at the university there, Beijing, and I ended with that poem. I said, the only poem I've written so far, since we've had so much traveling, and movements, I said, is this poem. I read it, and I said, and one of the officials said, Professor Sanchez, if we here in the East learn how to wear our days well, by the time you get the day in the West, perhaps we will have peace. Understand the power and beauty of that haiku. Understand the power and beauty of poetry, that this official in uniform, this soldier stood up and said, Professor Sanchez, Dr. Sanchez, if we here in China, Beijing, learn how to wear our days well, perhaps by the time you get it in the West, we will have peace. And that is why I write the haiku, because it is a peaceful form, that I can write the haiku and show the beauty, that is not only in nature, but the beauty, in ourselves. The nature of ourselves is always, always what I call soaked in beauty, the beauty of the land, the beauty of our eyes and our spouse, the beauty of the people, the beauty of Black people and all people at some particular point as we walk on this land. And I know, because of the poetry and having been a professor for 45 years, having listened to you younger people, what you write, how you move on this earth, you're moving this earth. And I say at the same time, make sure that you stay creative, keep writing, keep painting, keep drawing, keep getting on the stages and bringing us the plays that we need to hear, that will keep us going, and keep us alive and keep us holy and keep us always united with each other. Thank you so much for having me on this program. I It is such a joy to see you and to be with my family today.